Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I hope you're all enjoying this overly sunny, overly warm day. Sounds like most of the world is having the same problem right now. Um, anyway, I'm really thrilled. I have a friend with me today that I'm excited to have on the air. John Blackburn, he's in England, and he's somebody I've gotten to spend time talking to in person, as well as lots of video time as friends and helping a little bit with his project. Um, John's got a fascinating project he's been working on for about 10 years. This is very different than what you normally see in the metaphysical or the paranormal world. I'm not quite sure if it has a category. And instead of me going off more and more about all this, I'll welcome John to the show and let him tell you about it.
Hello,
Thank you
William.
so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, but do you want to know where it started really?
Yeah, I'd like to know a couple things. Well, I'd like to know a lot of things, but for the purpose of this show, um, uh, if we could do a quick how you got into the paranormal field, just so
Right.
people have a little bit of a background of what attracted to you, and then how you got involved with the project.
Yeah, quite an interesting one really. It goes back to when I was about I would have been about 13-year old, I think, and we lived in a place in Greater Manchester called Whitefield. Now, my mum at the time, she used to always have these horrific nightmares in this house.
Okay.
And the dream that she had was that there was somebody going to put a coffin lid on top of her. And then she'd wake up screaming. And she did this quite often. So, what actually happened on this particular night was that me and my brother used to share a bedroom. And we had bunk beds. Do you know what bunk beds are
Oh
in
yeah,
the thing? Yeah.
I had them for a while when I was young.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I was separated. And my brother's was underneath the window, and mine was against the wall. And my brother's 7 years older than me, and my sisters are both older than me as well. And I'm the baby of the family, which you won't believe now, would
I
you?
do.
So anyway, my brother and my sisters, they went to a party that night. My dad was a Class 1 lorry driver. He was working in Scotland, and because of the time constraints of driving back, you got to have certain rest time,
Right.
and he was working overnight. So with mum having these nightmares all the time, she asked me if she could sleep in Keith's bed in the same room as me. So we agreed, and that's what she did. So it got to, well, I don't know what time it was really. I went to sleep. I turned round, I faced the wall, and I felt a tapping on my shoulder 3 times. And you know when you're tired and you just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And I said, "Mum, you just leave me alone. I'm tired," or whatever I said. I can't remember what I said now. And then the tapping was on my shoulder again, and then I said, "Mum, I'm tired. Just leave me alone, please," or whatever words I said. And then there was a third tap, and then this time I turned round, and there next to my bed, about 2 feet in front of me, well, right next to the bed actually, probably about 2 feet away from me. Well, no, probably about 3 feet away from me, yes, I would say, was this young boy, and he was expressionless. No expression on his face whatsoever. He was very, very pale. His eyes just looked at mine, and we had this eye contact for about a minute, and it's a long time, a minute, when you're looking at somebody in the eyes.
Uh-huh.
And I got to this day, I can remember everything about this experience. And he had the sort of raggy clothes on that I can sort of describe as workhouse clothes. I assume what workhouse is, and a flat cap on. And what did I do? We had this eye contact for about a minute, and I just turned around and went back to sleep again. So the next day I was going to school, and me mum was making breakfast. And you know when somebody says something to you and then it sort of brings all those memories rushing back because they've hit a keyword.
Mhm.
And she says, John, did you see anything last night? And it all came back to me, and I said, why? And she said, because the curtains were open in the bedroom, and the moonlight was coming in because it was a full moon that night. And she said, my mum said that she could see this greenish mist around my bed. And she didn't see what I saw, but I saw the young boy and she saw the greenish mist. The interesting thing about Whitefield, Hillock Estate it was called, is it was built on a graveyard. The whole estate was built on a graveyard. So it's kind of strange that she had these nightmares of people putting coffins over. And
Right.
around the area, a lot happened. You know, people saw things. So that kind of, I was a young boy, 13-year-old. I didn't sleep for a week after that.
Now, what did
But,
she say when you told her what you saw?
oh God, I can't remember, but, you know,
Uh-huh.
she was interested. But it got me interested. And me and my sister Janice, we've always had this fascination with the paranormal, even being young. And we used to watch all the films like everybody else does. And we used to, well, I started reading a magazine, and it was called The Unexplained. I don't know if you've read that
That
one or not.
sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm talking years ago now, William. And
Uh-huh.
The Unexplained was
Well, I think you're younger than I am, John.
oh, I don't know about
Yeah.
that. um, and it just covered the whole spectrum of the paranormal, and it was brilliant, and it got me more interested.
Right.
So I didn't really get involved in anything. Well, I tried to get involved in something once. I had an ex-girlfriend many years ago, whose name was Janet, and we were about 20 at the time. And
Hmm.
I always remember listening to the radio at these two guys. They did an investigation. This was all these years ago, and it was at a place called. It was a church, and that's it, Blackley Church. It was called
Which church?
Blackley in
Okay.
Yorkshire. They visited the church. Somehow they persuaded the priest or the reverend to allow them to go in the church, and they experienced all sorts of things, and they recorded this, and they played it on the radio. So I thought, that's it, I'm going. So I haven't worked out how I was going to do it, but I was going to get some friends and go to this Blackley church. Anyway, my girlfriend at that time, she had a real dim view about these things. And she says, you're messing around with things that you don't understand. And she said, if you go, that's me and you're done. So I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't go. But incidentally, I went back many years ago to look at this church, and it's got a really weird feel about it. It really is. And yeah, it was. You know, to look at it. You've been there yourself, William. When you're outside a place and you look at it and you know there's something in there, yeah, and you want to be in there, and it was
Right.
that sort of feel. So it would have been interesting if I would have been able to do it all those years ago. So I didn't really do anything, and then it was me. My sister's older than me, and it was her 50th birthday, and I decided to buy her a present, which was to go on an investigation with a company. And we went, and she loved it. I loved it, and then for about 8 months later, I ended up working for the company, and then what happened from then? I probably worked for the company for about 5 years. Event company. We did all events all over the UK. And at the time, I worked in the water industry, and the water industry was making redundancies, and I knew that I was going to be one of them. So I took the package, I took voluntary severance, and then I set up a company called Mysteria Paranormal Events. This kind of goes on to my life-changing experience, really. You know, Mysteria was just an events company like a lot of others. So I won't really go into that. But I was probably about 3 years into the company, very busy. I did a lot of work with Ian Lawman at that time. Me and Ian worked together for about 3.5 years. Ian Lawman, soon you know Ian from the TV, Living with the Dead, TV program called Living with the Dead, and Most Haunted. He did that as well.
Okay.
And Ian was working with me, and we was doing events. And then Ian went off to do Haunted Australia. Now, I kind of jumped a bit forward really, because I got involved in the Anguish Man before that. So the Anguish Man is a haunted painting. It's deemed to be the most haunted painting in the world. And what happened was I got an email from a guy called Sean Robinson. This was 3 years into Mysteria, into working Mysteria. And he was all excited in this email. And he says, I've got more footage, you know, to show you. And he sent me the email as if he'd spoke to me before, when I've never heard of him, you know. And I watched the video attached to the email, and it was pretty mind-blowing, really. I thought, wow, it's amazing, that. So I spoke to Sean by video, and he says, yeah, I'm interested in having a chat to you, because he wanted to have a chat to me about it. I only found out later that he contacted the wrong person.
Oh.
Yeah, which is kind of, there's a lot of coincidences in this. It is totally weird. It really is. And he said he contacted the wrong person. So we had a chat on the phone, and he wanted to find out more about the painting. So I said, right, okay. I said the only way I can find out more about the painting is to work with it. So he said, right, fine. So we arranged. Well, I arranged via Mysteria a place called Wasdale Hall in Cumbria, because it was the best place to do it, because Sean also lived in Cumbria.
Okay.
And Wasdale Hall is in the Lake District National Park, and it's a beautiful hall. It's supposed to be haunted, but it's not that haunted, to be honest. but it was a base to work from,
right?
And I decided to make it into like a development weekend.
Okay.
And I got Sean to bring the painting along, which he did, and all the guests had a meal and stuff like that. So whilst all the guests were having a meal, I went to pick up Sean to bring him down, and then Sean could have a meal with all the guests. I picked up Sean. He came out of his house. He had a painting covered by a cloth. He put it in the boot, and then, lo and behold, as soon as he put the painting in the boot, the hairs on the back of my neck were stood up on end. They really were. We were driving down these little lanes in the Lake District National Park to get to Wasdale Hall. We got there. Sean sat down. He put the painting still covered up, propped it against the chair. And like I said, Wasdale Hall isn't really that haunted, to be honest with you. I mean, there might be something going on in the pool room, but other than that, there's nothing going on. So from feeling okay, instantly when Sean brought this painting into Wasdale Hall, the atmosphere changed. You could cut it with a knife. It was that much of a change. There were people all in a queue waiting to get food, and I thought, is it me? I wanted to make sure it wasn't me. Who was sort of imagining this. So I spoke to one of the guests, and I says, "How do you feel?" And she said, funny enough, since he brought that painting in there, she said it's totally changed. Well, she didn't see it as a painting, but she said, seeing he's brought that there, it's totally changed. So we did a few little, going through the weekend, we did a few little experiments with it, and we got people to have like a lone vigil with it within their little groups, and then compare notes at the end. So they got a chance to sort of work with it and stuff. And one group of ladies, and I always remember this, they said they could hear scratching noises coming from inside the painting itself.
Okay.
Which was strange. And there was other things that happened, but I probably need to move on because, like I say, I could talk about this for about 4 or 5 hours, no problem.
Right.
And that kind of really got me interested. So, to cut a long story short, Sean wanted me to find that information. I thought I would be working with a painting for two weeks. That's what I thought. 3.5 years later, I was still working with a painting, and it lasted for 3.5 years. The first 1.5 years, it was kind of like getting to know each other. I had to organise these events. I ended up calling them the Anguished Man Live Experiment.
Okay.
And because the reason why I called it that, because that's what it was. It was a live experiment. I wanted people to get involved and to experience, what was going on, and also to find out more information about the painting, for Sean, which he wanted. And it was like small things happened. And then I started, and then I got a friend of mine involved, called Stephen Griffiths, and he was one of the guys on the show mentioned before with Ian Lawman called Living with the Dead. And Stephen Griffiths is a brilliant investigator. He's great at what he did. And one day he worked out by putting filters on the picture. If you took a photograph of it, and then you took he put filters on it, and he could see that there was images underneath the painting itself. So in other words, there was a painting on top of a painting. Somebody's painted aspects of it, and this is all part of the story, the fascinating story of it, really. And there was, on the top left-hand corner of the painting, I mean, even Sean didn't know this. On the top left-hand corner of the painting, there was a skull, and you could only just see it. Under these filters that he put on the image, you could see the skull. And then on the left shoulder, the left shoulder was a devil, and on the right shoulder was an angel. So these have been painted over again during the artist's work. Now, the interesting thing about the painting is that Sean had a morbid fascination with it, and his grandmother, who owned the painting, she knew the artist. The artist painted it in his own blood, and when he finished it, he committed suicide. And his grandmother ended up with a painting because, of her friend being the artist. So when she died, she left a painting to Sean, and as soon as he brought it into the house, a lot of strange things happened. The energy in that painting was just off the scale. It really was. He always said that him and his wife was in bed, and soon, I think it was the first night he actually put the painting on the wall. A dark figure appeared at the end of the bed, which, as you can imagine, it wouldn't be nice, would it? But for somebody like Sean, he's only just got this thing. And the other interesting thing as well is that certain things happen, different things happen, but the main thing that happened that kind of spooked Sean was that his son at the time, hello Vivian Powell, his son at the time, he said that he felt a hand pushing down the stairs, an unseen hand pushing downstairs. At this point, it freaked Sean out. It really did, and he put it in the cellar. He put the painting in the cellar. It stayed there for a while. Sean then moved in with his with his mum and dad, and he took the painting with him. I may have left a few things out, but anyway, he took the painting with him, and guess what? His dad got pushed downstairs. He could have stumbled, who knows? But his dad's kind of reported the same thing as his son did.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of wanted to find out more about the painting, really. He did a load of videos. He did a load of TV shows. One with I can't remember what it's called now, but it was a show that was presented by William Shatner, and I can't remember what it was called.
Oh, I think it's called Unexplained or something like that, or Unexplained Mysteries,
or Real or what I think it was called, or something like that.
Okay.
I think it was, and then he did one about the Anguish Man. The Japanese were really interested in it. They thought it was amazing, and they did some documentaries about it and different things. Anyway, so in the meantime, I was working with it, and you know what? The thing that I really recognise all these years later is, I remember Sean saying to me that he was totally obsessed with it, and that's the way I got. I was totally obsessed in it, but unhealthy obsession, to be honest.
Right.
And he's what? I think the turning point for me was two things. The interesting point about when going back to Stephen Griffiths again, this skull on the painting that he found underneath the actual artwork of the painting. When he put a laser thermometer on it, the laser thermometer was something like, just around the area of the skull, was something like 15 Celsius higher than anywhere on the painting. And it wasn't near any radiators or anything like that to give it a false reading. And what Steve did, just to make sure, he turned it upside down, the opposite way. So if there was a heat source on that side, then if you turned it the opposite way, it wouldn't be there, would it?
Right.
And he took the temperature reading again, and sure enough, it was 15 Celsius higher again. And I thought that was totally blew my mind, that did. So, and the next thing that really, really kicked it all off was during the Anguish Man Live Experiment. One of the things, there was two things. I needed to find information about the painting for Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the next thing is that I thought to myself, what if you took an haunted item into a haunted location? What would happen? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was quite excited about that. What would happen? Because I knew the power of this thing. It wasn't just, somebody saying it's an active painting when it really is.
Right.
I took it to Chillingham Castle in Northumberland, which is it's been given the title of being the most haunted in Great Britain. I took it there, and I have never conducted an event where at the end of the night every guest was shaking. Really shaking. I had to calm this girl down. Sean came to that particular night, but he stayed downstairs because Sean had a bad back. He used to weightlift, and he had a bad back. And the room where we took it, the painting itself, I took it in the most haunted room, which is Edward's room. And there was too many stairs for Sean. He decided not to go, and it was a shame really, because I would have loved him to see what went on that night. So we took it to Edward's room. Now, the thing about Edward's room is underneath is Sir Humphreys, who owns Chillingham Castle. That's where his private apartments are. So it gets all the heat from the apartment below. So the actual room is quite comfortable, really. So we was doing a vigil in there. I chose that specifically to do the experiment with the painting. At that time, the painting didn't have an easel. I put it against the chair in the middle of the room. I had 24 people around the painting holding hands, including the staff from Chillingham Castle as well, who was there on the night. And as we've discussed before, the reason why you have people holding hands is because to generate the energy of the people, but also if everyone's holding hands and nobody can falsify anything.
Right.
So we were doing this, and at the back of the room, well, the side of the room, there was this wooden bench, and it looked like it was made out of oak or something, and it was quite an heavy bench. So at this point, I didn't really know a lot about the painting, to be honest. Like I said, only small things happened. It was sort of building up. And I started asking the painting questions. I remember putting a lady in front of the painting and a lady at the back of the painting, just stood there to give it a little bit more energy. And the reason why I did that is because in the past, I've done little experiments myself where I've done investigations with just women only and no men. And it's amazing. If you put women together and no men, the energy that the women build is just amazing. You know, a lot of activity connected with women when they're working together. Some people listening might think, "Oh, it's a crock of crap," but you know, these are things that I found. And I think ladies know that they're the strongest species anyway. So anyway, so I started asking questions that I knew about the painting, and at this point it wasn't much. And I was asking questions, and I said, I want to speak to the entity within the painting. And lo and behold, I've never seen anybody jump so high in my life. Something lifted this bench up. It must have been about 2 foot off the floor and banged it on the floor for once. Wow. All the circle jumped because it made them jump. And I thought, right, this is interesting. And then I said, well, can you just give me a sign for no then? And it banged twice. So then we had that common sort of yes and no response. I was asking questions that I can't remember now, but then I thought to myself, I need to ask the ultimate question. Sean's grandmother said she considered the painting, as to be pure evil. That's what she said. Right. Because she experienced things herself. So I said, would you consider yourself to be pure evil? The bench lifted up, banged down for once, sure enough. And then all of a sudden, remember me saying that the temperature was quite warm? It went from being warm to seeing your breath.
Wow.
You know, you're like an icy day when you go outside and it's like 5 below. You could see your breath. The temperature dropped so much, and then this dark figure, bearing in mind, but that what Sean saw at the bottom of the bed, this dark figure rose up from the painting, and I'm not kidding you, it must be 6'6". It was huge. There was a young girl who used to come on the events at that time called Abby Horrocks. I always say Abby Horrocks' name because if anybody wants to check this out, just send her a message on Facebook, and you know I'm sure she'll tell you the whole story about it. And this figure glided. It looked like it glided over towards her, right, to that far away, literally that far away, looking down at Abby Horrocks. Abby was shaking. She was really scared, and I thought to myself, I need to take control of this, you know, like you do. And I said, okay, I said, we've been working, I can't remember what I said now, but I said, you know, we've been working together for a long time now. I said, do you feel connected to me? And then all of a sudden, everybody saw this 24 people in the room. The figure, when within the circle, I could feel it coming around the back of me, and I could feel this intense energy trying to enter inside my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take control of it. I had to stop it doing whatever it wanted to do. You know, by blocking it, you know yourself, you can block it and keep it out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, everything stopped. The temperature in the room just went back to normal again, like it was before. And that lasted for a minute or less than that, where this temperature went back to normal. And then all of a sudden, you could tell that the entity that was there before wasn't there now, but something else came into the room. It felt different. And something else came into the room, lifted this wooden bench off the floor and flipped it upside down. So by this time, everybody was shaking. You know, I had to take them all downstairs and call it quits on the night. They believed the entity was connected with, who flipped the table over, was connected with Chillingham Castle, and he didn't like what was there, because obviously it was taken over, wasn't it? It was so powerful that night.
Right.
When that happened, it was a turning point, really, because obviously it took more of my interest. It got to be an obsession. I agree with that. You know, I admit that it got to be an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started carrying on the Anguish Man Live Experiment. It got to a place called Drakelow Tunnels. I took it there. Again, witnessed by people. On that night, I always remember that there was 2 guys there, and they were total skeptics. And at this time, I decided to get an easel, because I thought, you know, Sean's very kind of him to loan me this painting to find out more information about it. And I needed to protect it by getting this easel on, and that's what I did. So I got the easel, and as soon as I got the easel, it was like I give it legs. I really did, because it started to move on the easel. The first time, I think, it really moved was at Drakelow Tunnels, and it went berserk. These 2 guys were there with total skeptics. There was about, I don't know, but about 30 people there. I always had to have 2 ladies with the fingers just touching ever so gently, ever so gently on the side of the painting, so gentle, you know, that they can't do anything.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's just the way it works. He wanted that energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the painting just went ballistic. It just started dancing around the room. It really did, and it did a 360. You know,
Wow.
sort of rocking like that on the easel as it did this 360. These two guys were sort of looking. You know, they were holding hands. I got people to hold hands around the painting again. One guy, a young guy, was violently sick. And at the end of the night, I'd stopped it then, and these guys come over and said, "Can I look at the painting?" You know, the ones who were skeptical, and I said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "I just want to see if there's any strings on it." So I said, "Yeah, sure." Anyway, he looked, and he says, "Wow." He says, "I can't find anything. There's nothing that could do that."
Right.
And they came back to other events then because they were intrigued. I'm just telling you the best bits.
Right.
There's so much that went on.
Right.
And it got to where I was having conversations with the painting in front of people, because I needed the energy of the people all the time. That's what I needed. It was constantly. It was hungry. Yeah, he was constantly wanting the energy all the time. If I worked with a painting for 1 week in the month, he did small things. If I worked with the painting twice a month, it was really good. And then if I worked with the painting 3 times a month, it was amazing. And on this time at Drakelow Tunnels, when it danced, I probably worked it with three times in that month.
Okay.
That's how strong it got. And eventually, it got to the stage where I was talking to the painting and it would shake, and that for me was like a no.
Okay.
You know, the painting would shake for a no, and then lo and behold, when I wanted a yes response, he lifted the right leg of the easel, so we could get conversation then.
Right.
You know, I was getting somewhere. I never wanted to use. It's a bit ironic, really, but I never wanted to use a Ouija board with it because it'd make him lazy. Do you know what I mean? I wanted him to work as a painting. I didn't want any other form of communication apart from using himself as the entity in the painting. So I decided there's this place called 35 East Drive. 39. Is it 35 East Drive? Yeah, 39 East Drive. Whatever. It's East Drive anyway. And it's this place that you can hire. It's a house, and it's been on a film. They made a film of it, and it's very haunted. A lot of people have hired the place, and I contacted the owner, who was the director of the original movie, and I said I wanted to raise some money, and I wanted to spend 2 days on my own, but with a twist. I wanted to take the painting with me. And he agreed. And he said, "I agree on the one condition." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I think he said you stay 3 days in it," because he was being charitable. He wanted to do, to sort of raise more money. So anyway, so I was all prepared for it. I was sorting things out, and this didn't go down well, but I was sorting things out. And then I took the painting, and this is where it all gets really, really weird now, really, really strange. Because I've got to cut so much out because I'd be here all night speaking about it.
Right.
Just telling the best bits. There was this place called the Red Lion in Pontefract. So I took the painting to the Red Lion in Pontefract. And this place is just so interesting. The Red Lion is a pub in Pontefract. and the top floor of the pub was just old B&B rooms and old rooms that had been derelict. It was like an old hotel at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And the door to the actual hotel rooms at the top was screwed shut. Now, the landlord at the time, or the manager at the time, I should say, he said the previous owner of it screwed it shut because of what went on in the rooms. Now, whether he did it for security reasons or not, I have no idea. But that place was really active. So I took the painting there. And as mad as it sounds, this is the only time that me and the painting had a disagreement. Now, going back before this time, when I was working with the painting and getting the yes and no's, I got some really interesting information which blew my mind.
Okay.
And he gave me the name of David. Okay. And he said that he was suppressing, he attached it, well, he said that he was part of the painting, but he came afterwards and he was suppressing the darker side of the painting because the Anguish Man was off the scale. It was really, really a very active painting. It really,
Right.
really was. You know, there's lots of people, you see on the internet, you know, lots of people saying that Sean's faking videos and stuff like that. Stuff I've seen, there's no way Sean had faked anything because I've seen it all myself.
Yeah.
You know, people have seen it themselves. I think some people, you know, they see something and it's so amazing that they automatically think that someone's faked it. You know.
Yeah.
and that's just, I suppose, human nature on some people, I suppose.
Well, and there's a lot of fakery out there, and
Yeah,
it's gotten easier to fake things with technology and all that. So
yeah,
I understand.
and me
I
too. Yeah,
I appreciate the skepticism people have, as long as they're also willing to recognize that something isn't faked.
yeah. Well, I always said, if you fake something, you're just cheating yourself. So what's the point? You
Yeah. Hmm.
know? So he told me, you know, with these yes and no's, you know, I worked out what he was trying to say, basically, and told me his name was David, and that he'd attached himself to the painting, but he was there just to suppress the darker side of the painting.
Hmm.
So going back to the Red Line in Pontefract, I was talking to David then, you know,
Hmm.
because the painting would then respond to the name of David.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, I need to tell David what I'm going to do, you know, regards to this charity event I was going to stay in this place for 3 days. And there was 7 people there on that night. It was only a small event. There were 7 people there, and it was just mind blowing, William. It was just really mind blowing because it was like having a conversation with a human person.
Wow.
And I said, David, I said, I'm going to take you to this place. And I explained why I'm doing it. I said, I'm going to take you there and I want you there with me. And he started to shake violently. I mean, a lot. He was really shaking. And I said, is there something wrong? And he lifted the left leg of the easel. And I said, right, okay. And I said, and working again with these guesses and no's, worked out that he didn't want to go, he wouldn't go, and he didn't want me to go because of what was there in East Drive. And he said that if I did do it, if he went, you know, I worked all this out. It took a while, and other
Hmm.
people there, that he won't be able to suppress the darker side. The darker side would come out again. and he
Okay.
didn't want to do it,
Okay.
basically. So I did all this. I told everybody on Facebook and different things. I did interviews. I said I was going to do this 3-day lone vigil in East Drive, and I thought to myself, if I go and do it, and he's told me not to do it, then is David ever going to listen to me again? Is David ever going to interact with me again because I've not done what he said?
Right.
So I had to not do it. I couldn't do it. I had to say I couldn't do it. I got a few people saying, "Oh, coward," you know.
Right.
But I couldn't do it. I had to do what he said.
Yeah.
Because then the trust is gone, hasn't it?
Yeah. And well, he knew. I mean, because the trust has to go both ways. You have
Yeah.
to show a certain amount of trust for him as well,
Yeah.
and he would have a better understanding of what is there and what he could or couldn't control than you would have. So that would make sense.
It was strange. Strange times. But I've got to move the conversation now to part of the journey that was just destroyed me really for
Yeah.
a while.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
do you have, because I've had people ask for videos and things like that on the posts here. Do you have a YouTube channel or a website or something where people can go to find some of the videos? I have seen some and they're incredible. You know, like the one you sent me the link for. But
Yeah, that one is from a YouTube site called Physical Earth. Physical Earth, and you'll see the actual film footage that I've shown you. And just to explain to people watching,
it's
what actually
Physical
happened.
Earth.
Physical Earth, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You probably might have to put. I think there's a couple of Physical Earths there, but if you put John Blackburn in, you'll find it. And it was funny enough, if I remember rightly, this also happened. It was also filmed at the Red Line in Pontefract. Now, interestingly enough, this bit was interesting. I was driving on the way to Pontefract. I arranged, a good friend of mine, Stephen Griffiths, who I've not spoke to for a long time now. He had a team. They had all cameras and stuff, and they were going to the Red Line in Pontefract to film what went on that night. So
Okay.
I thought to myself, hi Nicola Johns, who just come on. I thought to myself, it's got to be good on this night. Everywhere I drove with the Anguish Man in the back of the car, I used to say, I used to tell him where we were going. It would be just me, the painting in the car. I know it sounds nuts, but I used to talk to him in the car, and I used to tell him where we were going. And on this particular night, I was driving to the Red Line in Pontefract, and I said, "Look, David, it's got to be good tonight. You've got to do stuff tonight because somebody's here filming. Yeah, and I just want to get a video of you responding like you do." And sure enough, on that night, he was brilliant. He was totally amazing. What actually happened was there was. I always, like I said, I always get two ladies touching either side of the painting, very very lightly like that, like on this video. And I asked David to face me, and he did. The actual easel swung round, and he faced me. It took a while. You know, the videos are about 8 minutes. No, I don't know, about 6 minutes long or something. So if you go right to the end, you'll cut out the rest of it. But if you look closely, it isn't the ladies that are pushing it. It goes around with so much force.
Yeah, I'm putting that up now, I think. And you do have to look, people, because there is a place where it looks like one of the ladies has her hand flat on the front and one
Yeah,
flat on the back, and
unfortunately,
like they could be. But if you notice, they don't have any pressure.
no.
And they're not holding on to the painting, which would fall off the easel.
Yeah.
And the easels don't turn that way. This is really quite smooth and the whole bit. So when you look at it, it's pretty obviously not something where they are manipulating the painting.
Well, the lady on the left, she swings around so fast that she almost falls over.
Yeah.
But I've got other videos as well, and they're not quite as good as that one. But that's why I'd kind of use that one, because it's the best one, really. But there is quite a few videos that Stephen Griffiths and his team took, and gladly, and very kindly gave them to me. They were gobsmacked of what went on that night. There was one lady in the team, and she got a bit spooked at one time because there was a blue light coming out of the painting towards her. Just so much went on. So yeah, so that that's probably the best piece of footage to go and have a look at. Is it? You're saying you put it on the interview? Have you put it up there?
I think I put something. I'm not sure that was the right one, so I'm going to put a different. I'm going to put.
Yeah.
There.
And
I may have done something wrong. Okay.
It kind of got to. I had so many ideas. I had so many ideas of what I wanted to do, and one of my ideas was to use this. I thought I'd get it out if you find it interesting.
Okay.
And this is what's called a germanium receptor. I've interviewed a guy called Robin Foy, and he did the skull experiment, which was an amazing experiment done by physical mediums. And the design from this was not. This isn't the actual one. This is one that I've made up, and it's kind of designed a bit differently, really. But the design from this was put on a blank film, and it was signed Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison have actually, in spirit, given the design to make this. And
wow.
It's called a germanium receptor because you see the silver in the middle there. That's a piece of germanium. It's what's called a semiconductor. It only conducts one way, and then it's got a copper screw on top, and you can actually, if you screw this, it just makes, you can undo it a little bit, and it touches the conductor underneath, which is a copper conductor, so you can regulate it a little bit. And the whole idea of this is to pick up spiritual vibrations and waves. Underneath, all you've got is a 12-volt amplifier, and that's attached to the speaker at the front. And on the skull experiment, you have voices coming through it. So I wanted to give the Anguish Man painting a voice. I wanted to actually use that, and by giving him the easel, I gave him legs, and I wanted to give him a voice as well by using this. Now, what actually happened is I started working with this guy. This guy wanted to work with me and start to film what I did, and we did it for a little while. I won't mention any names. And then he went to Sean behind my back and told him that was a fraud. So Sean was not happy, as you can imagine, and he took the painting back. And the this was 3.5 years later, and it kind of really, I can't, this sounds so wrong what I'm going to say now, but it's the only way I can say it. I grieved longer for that painting than I did when I lost my mum and dad. It was that strong. It took me a year to get over it. Maxine, my partner, she said, you need to really sort yourself out, because I wasn't interested in nothing. And I had to get myself back again. I didn't do anything for about 7 or 8 months. And then probably over a year later, I listened to Maxine and I put an event together. Now, interestingly enough, this guy, just before I forget, who told Sean I was a fraud, I then saw on social media that he was trying to work with a painting, which is quite interesting, really, isn't it? But
yes,
there was no way that he could work with it, because it took me 1.5 years just to get to know it. He didn't even know what to do with it. It wasn't about just sort of going to a painting and saying, right, I'm going to work with it now. It wasn't about that. It was about the just close connection with it. You had to get
you had a connection with the entity within the painting, the consciousness of being inside, and that's different than a piece of canvas with paint on it.
There was one time, Vivian Powell will tell you this. There was one time I couldn't say what I just said now, then without crying. It was a way so emotional. The actual breakup, it was just, it killed me for 12 months. It was like, the only way I've described it before is like, say if you had twins and you took twins apart, they'd be devastated, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
It was like that. So the strangest thing happened is when I listened and I got myself together, and again a year later, I did this event. I got this event together in a place called the Manor House in London, and it was the weirdest time. That was the weirdest time, because I used to work in the water industry, as I said, and this guy called Steve Smith, he used to always give me these books, and there was one book was he brought books, he read them, he tried things out, he got fed up with them, and then he gave them to me. So he bought this book of rituals, and he decided to give it to me. This was before I left. This was 5 years ago, before this event in London. Right, that's an important thing. 5 years ago, before this event in London.
Okay.
I put this event together in London, and guess what? I got a text from Steve, this guy who gave me this book, and he said to me, Johnny says, I see you've got an event in London. Can me and my son come to it? And I said, yeah, of course you can. He never did come to it, but it was weird, which you'll find out in a minute why it's. Anyway, so another friend of mine brought this Ouija board. Okay. And now I don't use Ouija boards. I never have done. And the reason being because it's like some people love them, some people hate them, some people can be affected by them. So it's just easier not to use them. And that's what I don't. Anyway, so this guy coming on the event, he said he was compelled to give the Ouija board to either me or Maxine. He was compelled to do that. He says he doesn't know why, but he had to bring it, so he brought it. So it got to about 2:00. I was going to bed that night, and Bill Smith, he's the one who gave the Ouija board to Maxine. He didn't give it to me. He gave it to Maxine because he knew I didn't want to use them. So I didn't even know it was there, to be honest with you. So Maxine, Bill Smith, his wife Cheryl, his wife and a lady called Cheryl, they all stayed up at the end of the night. They decided to get the planchette out, get the Ouija board out. I was in bed asleep. They put the finger on the planchette and it just automatically spelled David. And David then got in touch with them. He told them on the Ouija board about this book, the one that Steve Smith gave to me. He told them the name. He told them the paragraph to look into it. And I know it all sounds bizarre. I'm just saying what these guys said. They told me the paragraph. To look at the ritual on this page, which we did. And they wrote all this down. Told me the next morning when I got up to make our way home, and Maxine said, "You need to come outside a second." And I said, "Right." And she told me all this, and the blood drained from my face. I think I was just so gobsmacked. That's all I can say, really. And he attached himself to the Ouija board. So we took it home. Maxine had it for a while. We was living at different places then. The Ouija board was at Maxine's. I used to talk to David on the Ouija board on the phone. Maxine had put the phone next to the Ouija board, and I had a conversation with him. I kept speaking to him all the time, so I had his contact. And I thought I was trying to get. I was getting myself back then, and I thought to myself, when you were dead annoyed and stuff, and I thought, do you know what? No one's going to call me a fraud. I'm not a fraud. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to follow the instructions on this ritual because it was there because it was given to us for a reason, and I wanted to find out the reason.
Right. So
a good friend of ours called a place called Cook's Corner in Hartlepool. Jason Cook owns a place, and that's a haunted little cafe, and the basement is where all the action is, really. So he allowed me to use it. I took the painting on the easel. Oh no, sorry, I got a painting. I got a blank canvas. I painted it white. I put it on the easel, and I attached the Ouija board, if I remember rightly. No, I didn't. There was a copper table I had, and the copper table had copper wires, which I attached to the painting. The painting itself, the actual blank canvas itself, I changed it. I put copper around all the edges because I worked with the Anguish Man for so long. I knew where all the energy spots were.
Right.
All right. So I mimicked that. I put copper around the edges. On the back of the painting, I put a wooden board on the back of the painting, and on that, I put 4 copper plates where I knew where the energy spots were on the Anguish Man. And these copper plates were then attached with copper going to the side of the painting. So the whole thing was a circuit, really. So I'd changed the painting into a circuit. And then I attached that to the copper table with the Ouija board on it. The actual instruction on the ritual was that we needed one of each of the astrology signs, Pisces and so on. And to be honest, we didn't get one of each, but we near enough did. and we put them all around the circle, touching the painting, which was just brought from a shop, painted white. And lo and behold, painting started to move. The actual white canvas moved. It didn't move a lot, but it moved. When we asked David, we're doing transmigration. So we were moving spirit from spirit board to the painting.
Right.
Because I thought, well, David doesn't belong in a spirit board. He belongs in a painting. And that's what I did. It's kind of evolved from there, really, and that's painting. The painting behind us, that's David behind us there, the painting of David. Anyway, that's it. That was a weird time in itself when I put a face on it, and it's still an ongoing project. It's still changing. And the painting's moving now. You know, this painting is moving now. But the last time I used the painting, I took him to Chillingham Castle about 12 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few people there, a lady called Karen Ford and her husband David Ford. And I decided on at night, I've got to do it. I attached the germane receptor to the painting. Okay. And I should have sent it to you, actually, but I'll explain it anyway. So the actual germanium receptor was attached to the painting, and it's got copper conductors on the side of the painting, so it was attached to that. There was two ladies touching the painting on the side, like I always want them to, and Karen and myself was asking the painting questions. The painting was moving, and I was saying to David, I said, "Can you move round and face the lady to the right, please?" And the painting was moving violently. At that time, me and Karen were talking to the painting, encouraging him to move.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he couldn't move on a carpet. He can never move on a carpet. It always had to be, a normal floor, just a polished floor, because it's too much friction on a carpet. It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I put him on a polished floor, just past where this large carpet was. So the carpet was rolled back a bit, and the painting was on the floor. We didn't hear anything until later on, when we played it back, because we had a voice recorder close to the speaker. We could hear me and Karen giving David the instructions to turn around and face the lady to the left. And then lo and behold, this voice, very, very clear to hear, on the voice recorder said, "I'm really trying." And when we looked, we could see that the leg of the easel got caught on the carpet. I was gutted. I should have rolled the carpet back more. So, but I'm saying that I wasn't, because I've got this recording, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to communicate with David via the germane receptor, and it worked. But it's only worked once. So I've kind of the last 3 years has been bad, really. The last 3 years has been really bad. I've struggled. I've for many things. For COVID, that kind of struggled, made everybody struggle, didn't it? Because we couldn't do anything.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I've been through a divorce over the 3 years, and it's just been a difficult time. My mind's, my head's not been there.
Right.
But I'm starting to get it back again. And funny enough, talking to you, William, weeks ago, that gave me a push.
Oh,
So
good.
I I'm going through a different phase at the moment. I don't think events are the way to go, because, like we spoke before about the war in the Ukraine, about people having no money, it's very very dangerous time for events, really.
Mhm.
If you lay out £1,000 for an event and you don't get the people to fill it, you lose out, big
Right.
time, really. And plus, I need to concentrate on David more. I need to do something different. And what I thought of doing is I'm going to go to spiritualist churches. Thanks, Viv. Viv just put a nice message. I'm going to go to spiritualist churches and get them involved a bit, do some demonstrations, do some talks. I've even thought about parapsychology students, in universities, things like that. These are things that we need to sort of, I need to get going, really. If anybody wants me to do a talk or a demonstration on any of their events or whatever, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that as well.
Well,
But
that's where I first met you, was at the Paraforce event Vivian did.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was it was an amazing event. She did
Yeah,
really well with
yeah.
that Paraforce.
And I didn't get a chance to actually listen to or see your talk because I was giving one at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
which we both wanted to see each other, but it didn't work, did it?
Right.
but never mind. So that's my story, really. There's I don't know whether to say what else I found out about the painting, because you've got people here who don't know nothing about the painting. Some people do, and this is what we talked about, isn't it, William? Really, we've got the
Yeah.
painting behind me. Can anybody who's watching this now, what do you think about the painting? What do you feel from it? Does it give you any thoughts of what the history is behind David? I know you have your own opinion, and
We've talked quite a bit
I
about it.
don't know whether you want to tell anybody about your opinion about the painting, but or is that something you want to keep to yourself?
Well, and when I do readings, because that's a lot of what it was, I was my own form of communication with the painting, because as a medium, um, but or with David, and I say that instead of the painting, because it's not as so much the physical object as the being that's part of that object, the consciousness that's part of it, or attached to it, whatever word you want to use. And so I don't always, those conversations were a while back, and I'd like to do more of them. But what I see now is actually pretty peaceful and content. I think the change is a little different. The dark side of the painting doesn't look as dark as it used to, or at least as dark as I remember it looking. And basically the message I'm getting from David is peace, at peace and calm.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm getting right now is he's pretty content with how things are, in a lot of ways. He's content not having to prove himself all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and not having to work too hard.
Yeah.
That's not saying you were working him too hard. That's not it at all. But it's like there's a place in the relationship of maybe more trust and acceptance without as much showmanship. That's not the right word. Wow. And so it's I don't get as much of a, because part of what it was before is there was a deceptive element to him, and or at least part of it, and part of that could have been the negative side that he was repressing. But beings, all of us are multiple sided, and there was a piece that was clear to me that was trying to take advantage, um, and I don't feel that
Mm-hmm.
so strongly anymore. Um, but and that's just what I see.
Some interesting comments there whilst you
Yeah,
David. Sorry, William. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I put that up with what I was reading Vivian's too. But what? I'm sorry. What did you just say?
Oh, I was sorry to interrupt. There's some interesting comments coming up, and
Yeah,
people saying things.
yeah, and well, and I think, like with Nicola, the two sides. Well, the two sides of the face represent the two different sides of the person or of the being, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so there are those pieces to it, but I I don't sense any big issues or problems. It's quieter. I mean, he's quieter. He's not doing as much, but
He's saying you trust him more now because before you didn't, did you?
no, I trust him a little bit more. But I think he trusts you more,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you trust him more too.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and some of the stuff I said before, I think is probably still true, but I don't think it's as strong or as important or anything at this point.
Is it
Um,
something that you want to tell everybody, or is it something you want to keep to yourself? What you said last time.
well, I think I can. You remember what I've said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you're comfortable with it, I'll go ahead and say it.
Fine. Yeah. Fine.
Um, there have been times when he's wanted the corporal body, and to get, and yours was a perfectly good one to have around. How much of that was David, and how much of what he's repressing, I'm not sure, but I there was definitely that part where he would like to be more active in a physical human form. I think he would still do that if he had a chance, but I don't think he's pushing for it at this point. And I'm not sure. I feel like there's more of a consciousness with him now saying, oh, wait, but would that be fair to John if I did something like that? I think he's more hesitant. I'm seeing the positive come
Mm-hmm.
through more than the selfish at this point, where um, I think he would like to keep you as you and not you become him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before he would have been quite happy to have you become him. Now that doesn't mean he wouldn't mind somebody else becoming him. Um, but I don't feel the urgency for any of that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe it's just the day. But I think, does it make any sense to you, John?
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing that you said about David wanting to be part of my body at one time, is um, is on events gone by. There's been quite a number of times when I've done transfiguration that people have seen the face of David,
Okay.
which is interesting. So, because that shows, doesn't it, that close connection.
Yeah.
I'm speaking, and I keep seeing people's messages coming up, and I'm not getting quite to read them because I'm speaking. But there was one gentleman said as David passed, and I believe he has.
Hmm.
I don't know who David is. I don't know a lot about David yet. That's what I'm wanting to find out, because I feel like David's got a story to tell.
Hmm. Yeah, because he's not. David is different than the original entity that was in the painting that was done with blood,
Mm.
right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because
Well,
that was the person from Auschwitz.
the painting, but David's not part of that painting. Well, David came later.
Yeah,
He wasn't part of the original painting.
right.
That caused a bit of controversy itself as well, as you can
Right.
imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, David's come through to help and watch and protect with you. And that could be part of it. That other energy might not be as strong with this now as it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Is there any way that you can bring up the messages that people said before?
yeah,
Right, so Vivian said, I feel that David was more than just a man that lived on the earth plane, and he could not cope with what man did to one another. Right, I see. That would make sense.
yeah,
What Vivian said. He wants to talk through your voice. I need to be written down. And he wants the world to hear. Yeah, I believe what Vivian's saying. He
yeah.
wants he wants
Right.
to tell a story.
And with the box that you've set up now and the speaker, he can do that without having to be inside somebody.
Yes, that's
Um,
fun.
yeah, Eric, the original one was. Um, artificial intelligence.
Right, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I like where Viv's going with this.
Yeah. Um, let me see. And then this is the second part from Eric's. Vivian says I'm a wizard because I make things appear.
Me and Sean tried to hold the painting down to stop it moving, but we couldn't. I can never remember that happening, Viv, but I'm pleased it did, because you got to experience that.
Yeah. And I don't know Sean, but Vivian's my little sister.
Mm-hmm.
So she. Oh yeah, Vivian, definitely. Well, they did the work putting together that relationship. We have reason to be distrustful of things from the other side a lot of times, or whatever you want to call that realm,
Mm.
because we don't know, but they have reason to be distrustful of us. I mean, it's like any relationship. You have to get to know the other being, the other. I don't want to use person because I don't want to put labels on, but you have to get to know each other and get a feel for each other, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's you get an instant hit of how good that can be, but sometimes those aren't correct, and so it's important to make sure that you take the time, you
Mm-hmm.
know. That's part of what he did want, Vivian. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I don't feel like he wants it as much now, but I know, but it was also more like he wanted to stay once he got in, I think. Maybe now he doesn't want to stay so much. I don't know.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
that's me.
now people have had a chat about it and they've had a look about it. Do they want to know what I know about what I found out about the Anguish Man when I was working with it? Do you want to know that now, or shall I let people see if they
Let's
can?
do that another time. This has been an hour and 25 minutes,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I would like to do that show as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, Vivian says yes, please.
Hmm.
And so um, I'm talking to somebody about possibly doing one of my 2 August spots. Let me get a shot back from them and see if we could even do it the next show or the one after.
Of course, not a
If
problem.
that works for you.
Yeah, of
I'd
course.
like to have it closer because that way it's more of a continuation, and especially since I only do 2 shows a month.
Yeah.
Um, thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Nicola.
But it's David. I mean, it's John that's been fascinating, and you too, David. I'm sorry, but mostly I've let John tell his story. But thank you, Vivian. She loves the show. Um, so yeah, let's set that up, and then I'll let people know, and I'll also by the end of the weekend I will have the links up, and I'll send them to you so you
Hmm.
can send them out, so people who weren't on can watch the show
Yeah.
because that's usually the way it works.
Hmm.
If we get 8 or 10 people live, I'm happy, and then you get several hundred or more after the fact. So,
Hmm.
in the next few weeks. So, do you have anything else at the last closing that you want to say, John?
Um. Yeah, just one thing really. Um. What I said last time about Sean. Sean was obsessed uh, with the Anguish Man, and like I said to you before, I've got to be obsessed with it too. And to be
Yeah,
honest with you, I think that's part of why I got divorced because that's all that I could focus on was working with painting
yeah,
and getting into work,
hmm
working with it as much as I could. Um, so what I'm trying to say is that the uncanny thing is that Sean was obsessed with it, and so was I,
yeah.
and it just makes you wonder why, doesn't it?
It
And
does.
we know why. We know why because of the
Uh-huh.
connection. Sean had some form of connection with it
Yeah,
because
and
he did
I
it all the
agree,
time.
and I think that was something we talked about quite a while ago too. Is
Mm,
um, don't let it take over your life,
mm.
but and that's still something to consider. But um, very good, Charles.
Mm.
Um, and um, yeah, I'm sorry if did I cut you off?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Um, you've got my brain going, and that's one of the things I always like talking to you is you make me think,
Hmm.
and you also help me to tune in and to focus and on the whole piece of it. And so sometimes I get lost. I mean, in my own, it just
Yeah,
goes, and then all these other things open up a little bit because of the catalyst. But thank you so much, and
much.
thank you all that came in and were on in the chat room.
Thank you, Vic.
And I look forward to having you on very soon again to continue the story.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody, and have a great rest of the weekend. Those of you that are in hot climates, No, the Earth hasn't swallowed us, and we haven't all gone to hell. It just feels like it over 90% of the planet, it seems like. So find ways to please keep cool and drink lots of water. I mean, heat-related health issues are a real problem, and they can be lethal. So take care of yourselves. If you feel bad, get into a cool place, call the ambulance, whatever, but be healthy.